Imagine a world where the story of human history, as we know it, is not false, but incomplete. A version trimmed, simplified, and made comfortable enough to believe. A story designed to feel stable, linear, and reassuring. Now imagine that beneath this carefully arranged narrative lies something far older and far more fragile. A truth not hidden in books or legends, but buried deep within the earth itself. A truth suggesting that humanity did not rise once from darkness into civilization, but rose again and again, only to be erased each time. This is not a story about myth or fantasy. It is a story about patterns. Patterns etched into stone, encoded into genetics, and repeated across cultures that never knew each other. Patterns that whisper the same unsettling possibility: modern civilization may not be humanity's first great achievement. It may be the seventh. The first clues do not appear in ancient texts or oral traditions. They appear in the ground beneath our feet. Across the world, monumental architecture emerges suddenly in the archaeological record, already perfected. There are no prototypes. No crude early attempts. No visible learning curve. Engineering, geometry, and astronomical precision arrive fully formed, as if the builders had inherited knowledge rather than invented it. Ancient calendars track celestial cycles with accuracy rivaling modern calculations. Megalithic structures align with stars, solstices, and planetary movements so precisely that even small errors in construction would have rendered them useless. Yet according to the accepted timeline, these builders were recent hunter-gatherers, barely transitioning into agriculture. The contradiction is impossible to ignore. When examined closely, the official narrative begins to fracture. In deserts, massive ruins stand isolated, with no culture willing to claim them. In mountain ranges, stones are cut with tolerances so exact that modern engineers struggle to reproduce them even with advanced machinery. Beneath the oceans, vast geometric formations lie arranged in patterns that defy natural explanation. And buried under layers of earth older than civilization itself, objects appear that should not exist at all. Metallic fragments with machined surfaces. Perfect right angles sealed inside ancient rock. Objects embedded in geological layers where only natural processes should be present. These discoveries are often dismissed as errors, contamination, or hoaxes. Sometimes that explanation is valid. But when the same anomalies appear repeatedly, across continents and time periods, coincidence becomes a fragile defense. The deeper researchers dig, the more the ground resists the story we were taught. Archaeology begins to reveal not a smooth progression of human advancement, but abrupt leaps followed by long silences. Entire chapters appear to be missing. Civilizations seem to emerge suddenly, flourish briefly, and then vanish without a trace. What kind of force could erase an entire civilization so completely that not even its name survives? Fire alone cannot do this. Floods alone cannot do this. Ice alone cannot do this. Darkness alone cannot do this. But a sequence of all four, repeating across vast stretches of time, could. Now consider a different model of history. Not a straight line rising steadily upward, but a cycle. Civilizations rise during periods of planetary stability. They grow, innovate, organize, and build. Then the planet shifts. Climate changes abruptly. Oceans surge. Skies darken. Temperatures collapse or spike. Infrastructure fails. Memory fractures. Survivors scatter into isolated pockets of the world, carrying fragments of knowledge they no longer fully understand. When the world stabilizes again, their descendants rebuild. They believe they are the beginning. They are not. They are the aftermath. In this model, myths are no longer symbolic stories. They become trauma memories. Flood legends. Sky fire. Long winters. Wandering survivors guided by voices, visions, or inherited knowledge. These stories appear in cultures separated by oceans, languages, and tens of thousands of years, yet they share the same core elements. That is not coincidence. That is memory under pressure. If this cycle is real, then modern humanity is not the first advanced civilization. We are the seventh. and the traces of the 6 before us still remain faint, scattered, and deliberately overlooked. Some of the most disturbing evidence comes not from monuments, but from objects that should not exist in their geological context. Workers mining coal have uncovered metallic cubes and gears sealed inside seams hundreds of millions of years old. Coal forms from plant matter compressed under immense pressure over vast spans of time. No known process allows modern objects to enter these layers naturally. Iron tools of exceptional purity have been found embedded in solid limestone. Brass vessels have been discovered inside geodes that took millions of years to crystallize. Spark plug-like components have emerged from volcanic ash layers dated far earlier than modern humans. These objects are not floating anomalies. The surrounding material is dated using multiple independent methods. The context is clear. The objects do not belong where they are found. Mainstream explanations attempt to contain these discoveries. Contamination. Misidentification. Hoax. Sometimes those explanations are correct. But not always. Especially when metallurgical analysis reveals alloys too advanced for the era they are supposedly from, and when documentation quietly disappears from public archives. A pattern begins to emerge. Discoveries that challenge the accepted timeline are acknowledged briefly, then retracted. Museum artifacts are moved into storage without catalogue numbers. Research papers are published and quietly withdrawn. Excavation permits are denied. Entire underwater regions are restricted under vague justifications. The deeper a discovery threatens the linear narrative of history, the faster it vanishes from view. Beneath the oceans, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Sonar mapping reveals vast linear grids on the seafloor where no civilization is supposed to have existed. Divers encounter stone terraces, staircases, and platforms carved with deliberate geometry. Official explanations often describe these as natural formations. Yet nature does not produce mile-wide platforms with 90-degree angles. Nature does not align structures with celestial events. Off the coast of Japan, near Yonaguni Island, a massive underwater structure rises from the seabed. At first glance, it appears geological. But closer inspection reveals symmetrical terraces, straight edges, carved channels, and pyramid-like formations aligned to cardinal directions. The deeper divers explore, the more the structure behaves like architecture rather than erosion. Across the Indian Ocean, sonar scans near the coast of India reveal the remains of a submerged city matching ancient descriptions of Dwarka, a legendary city once dismissed as myth. Stone walls, foundations, and sculpted artifacts lie beneath layers of silt. The geometry of the site matches descriptions written thousands of years ago. A city said to have vanished beneath the sea in a single night. Farther south, the Sunda Shelf between Southeast Asian islands reveals straight channels and rectangular depressions beneath shallow waters. These areas were once fertile plains during the last ice age, capable of supporting large populations. What now lies underwater resembles planned settlements rather than random geology. These submerged sites align precisely with flood stories preserved in oral traditions. Indigenous Australians speak of coastal land swallowed by rising seas. Polynesian navigators recount island chains that vanished. Southeast Asian tribes describe ancestral journeys inland as the ocean advanced. These are not metaphors. They are historical memory stretched across millennia. Yet flooding alone does not erase knowledge so completely. Cities can drown, but language, memory, and culture usually persist. Something more must have occurred. Something capable of targeting not just infrastructure, but continuity itself. At this point, the mystery deepens further. Because not all evidence of earlier civilizations exists in stone or metal. Some of it exists in us. Human DNA is a vast archive of survival. Most genetic variation follows predictable patterns shaped by climate, diet, and migration. But certain anomalies defy easy explanation. A rare genetic cluster appears in less than half of 1% of the global population. Too rare to be random. Too consistent to be coincidence. This cluster appears among populations with no recent connection, isolated groups in India, coastal tribes of Southeast Asia, indigenous Australians, the Basque people of Europe, and scattered communities near regions of submerged ruins. These groups share no common language or recent ancestry. Yet the same genetic markers appear in all of them. The traits are unusual. Enhanced resistance to low oxygen. Exceptional endurance under physical stress. Subtle but measurable differences in brain regions associated with spatial awareness and environmental mapping. These traits do not appear independently. They appear bundled, inherited together as if passed down from a shared ancestral population. Brain imaging reveals heightened activity in regions associated with pattern recognition and long-term environmental memory. Not personal memory, but instinctive orientation, the ability to read landscapes, track celestial cues, and sense seasonal shifts without formal training. Traditional explanations struggle here. High-altitude adaptation does not explain coastal populations. Interbreeding with archaic hominins does not match the geographic spread. Environmental pressures alone cannot account for the bundled nature of the traits. Instead, the pattern aligns with survival. Survivors of catastrophic cycles. Small populations forced to endure extreme conditions repeatedly. Over time, most of these adaptations faded. But a few persisted, hidden deep within the genome. Most unsettling of all, epigenetic markers show these sequences becoming more active today. As environmental conditions begin to resemble those of ancient collapses, rising carbon dioxide, shifting magnetic fields, climate instability, it is as though the genome remembers what the conscious mind has forgotten. This does not prove ancient advanced civilizations. But it proves something equally profound. Humanity is not starting from zero. We carry echoes of earlier worlds within us. And standing above these genetic whispers are the great stone monuments of the ancient world. Structures so precise, so massive, and so globally consistent that they appear less like inventions and more like remnants. At Giza, the Great Pyramid aligns to true north with near-perfect accuracy. Its internal geometry encodes mathematical relationships that should not have been known at the time. Beneath its visible casing lies a core that appears far older than its accepted date. In Peru, the massive stone walls of Sacsayhuaman interlock with precision that defies modern explanation. Each stone is unique, shaped to fit perfectly without mortar. The Inca themselves stated that they did not build the foundation. They inherited it. Across the world, the pattern repeats. The oldest structures are the most precise. The younger ones show decline, not improvement. This inversion is not natural. Technology does not regress unless knowledge is lost. These monuments often sit on geological hotspots, fault lines, quartz-rich formations, or magnetic anomalies. They appear to interact with the Earth itself, suggesting functionality beyond symbolism. Whether they served as observatories, resonators, or something we no longer understand remains unknown. But what is clear is this: the civilizations credited with building these structures did not possess the tools or knowledge required to create them from scratch. Which leads to the question that defines everything that follows. If 6 civilizations rose before ours, if they built, advanced, and were erased, then what ended them? And more importantly, are we next? To understand how entire civilizations could vanish again and again, we must stop looking only at humanity and begin looking at the planet itself. Earth is not a passive stage upon which history quietly unfolds. It is an active system, dynamic, unstable, and governed by cycles far older than human memory. When these cycles shift, everything built upon the surface becomes temporary. The idea that Earth operates in rhythms is not speculative. It is measurable. The planet tilts, wobbles, and precesses in long arcs of time. Ice sheets advance and retreat. Oceans rise and fall by hundreds of feet. Volcanic systems awaken in clusters. Magnetic fields weaken and realign. None of this happens on a human schedule, but when it does happen, it reshapes the world violently and without warning. Geological records reveal that long periods of stability are interrupted by sudden transitions. These are not gradual changes spread over tens of thousands of years. They are abrupt. Ice core samples from Greenland and Antarctica show layers where climate shifts occurred within decades, sometimes even years. One layer holds evidence of a thriving, stable ecosystem. The next shows collapse, ash, dust, chemical imbalance, and extreme temperature swings. One of the most studied examples is the Younger Dryas event. Around 12,800 years ago, Earth experienced a sudden return to near-glacial conditions after a period of warming. Temperatures dropped rapidly. Ice sheets expanded. Winds intensified. Rainfall patterns collapsed. For hunter-gatherer societies, this was catastrophic. For any advanced civilization living near coastlines or fertile plains, it would have been devastating. What makes the Younger Dryas so unsettling is how quickly it began and how violently it reshaped the planet. Meltwater floods tore across continents. Sea levels surged. Entire regions were submerged. And then, just as suddenly, the climate stabilized again. Humanity emerged from this period scattered, diminished, and rebuilding. This pattern is not unique. Geological history is filled with abrupt climate events. Massive volcanic eruptions have repeatedly injected ash and sulfur into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight for years. These volcanic winters caused crop failures, famine, and societal collapse even in recorded history. On a prehistoric scale, such events would have erased entire cultures. There is also evidence of cosmic interference. Impact craters, microspherules, shocked quartz, and elevated platinum levels suggest that Earth has been struck repeatedly by fragments of comets or asteroids. These impacts do not always leave massive craters. Some explode in the atmosphere, releasing energy equivalent to thousands of nuclear weapons. The result is firestorms, shockwaves, and global climate disruption. Fire, flood, ice, and darkness. Over and over again. When these forces combine, civilization does not merely decline. It is reset. If earlier civilizations existed, their destruction would not leave behind neat ruins waiting to be discovered. Their cities would be drowned beneath rising seas. Their tools would be buried under meters of sediment. Their metals would corrode. Their organic materials would vanish entirely. Only the most durable remnants, stone foundations, anomalous artifacts, and distorted memories would survive. This explains one of archaeology's greatest mysteries, the missing progression. We expect to see a gradual development from simple tools to complex societies. Instead, we see sudden appearances. Agriculture emerges fully formed. Writing systems appear without clear ancestors. Monumental architecture arrives without transitional phases. Take Göbekli Tepe. Officially dated to around 9600 BCE, it predates agriculture according to the Standard Model. Yet it displays massive stone pillars carved with symbolic imagery, arranged in precise circular enclosures aligned with celestial events. This site was not built by nomadic hunter-gatherers experimenting with stone. It was constructed by people who understood organization, labor coordination, and astronomy. Even more puzzling is that Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. Thousands of tons of soil were used to cover the site carefully, not as a result of natural erosion. Someone wanted it hidden. Preserved. Sealed away. Why would a society capable of such construction abandon and bury it? One possibility is that it represented the last remnant of a much older tradition, preserved briefly after a catastrophe before being intentionally sealed as the world changed again. As sea levels rose after the last ice age, coastlines shifted dramatically. Entire continents did not sink, but vast continental shelves did. These shelves were once dry land, rich with rivers, forests, and wildlife. They were the most hospitable environments on Earth. They would have attracted the largest populations and the most advanced societies. Today, they lie underwater. This is why so many anomalies appear beneath the oceans. It is not because ancient people preferred the sea. It is because the sea moved. During the last glacial maximum, sea levels were more than 120 meters lower than they are today. Land bridges connected continents. The Sunda Shelf formed a massive landmass connecting Southeast Asia. The Sole Shelf connected Australia and New Guinea. Beringia connected Asia and North America. These were not narrow crossings. They were enormous regions capable of supporting millions of people. And then the ice melted. As glacier collapsed, meltwater surged into the oceans at staggering rates. Some studies suggest sea levels rose by several meters in a single century. Coastal settlements would have been lost generation by generation, sometimes within a single lifetime. This aligns precisely with ancient flood narratives. Not one great flood, but many regional floods occurring rapidly and repeatedly as the world transitioned out of an ice age. For a civilization built along coastlines, rivers, and deltas, this would have been the end. Yet flooding alone does not explain the total loss of knowledge. Survivors should have carried their technologies inland. But inland archaeology often shows regression rather than continuity. Why? Because floods were only one part of the collapse. Volcanic activity increases during periods of deglaciation as pressure on Earth's crust shifts. Massive eruptions would have darkened skies for years. Crops would fail. Temperatures would plummet. Starvation would follow. Then there is the magnetic field. Earth's magnetic shield is not constant. It weakens, drifts, and occasionally reverses. During weakened periods, cosmic radiation increases. Electrical systems, if any existed, would fail. Navigation based on magnetism would become unreliable. Even human health may be affected. The combination of rising seas, volcanic winters, cosmic radiation, and ecological collapse would not just destroy cities. It would fragment populations, isolate survivors, and shatter continuity. This is how memory dies. Not all at once, but through repeated trauma. Across cultures worldwide, the same stories appear. A time when the sun dimmed. A time when the stars shifted. A time when the oceans rose and swallowed the land. A time when fire fell from the sky. These stories are not identical, but they rhyme. And they appear in places that could not have shared them through contact. In the Andes, oral traditions speak of a darkness that lasted so long people lost track of time. In Australia, stories describe burning rain and a poisoned sky. In Mesopotamia, flood myths describe divine warnings and chosen survivors. In Northern Europe, legends tell of a great winter that ended the world. Mythologists call these archetypes. Geologists call them data points. When ice cores, sediment layers, and fossil records are compared to these stories, the overlap becomes uncomfortable. It suggests that ancient people were not inventing stories to explain the unknown. They were remembering events too large to fully comprehend. As civilizations collapsed, survivors scattered. Some fled to mountains. Others followed rivers inland. Many lost access to the materials and infrastructure required to maintain advanced systems. Over generations, knowledge degraded. Tools simplified. Language shifted. What remained were rituals, symbols, and stories. This explains why advanced knowledge appears suddenly in later civilizations. It was not discovered. It was remembered, imperfectly. Astronomy re-emerges. Geometry returns. Agriculture appears optimized rather than experimental. Stonework resumes with precision and then gradually declines. History, viewed this way, is not a ladder. It is a waveform. And every wave has a crest. If earlier civilizations existed during previous stable periods, then their remnants would be concentrated in regions that are now hostile to archaeology, beneath oceans, under deserts, and beneath ice. The Sahara Desert, for example, was once green. Satellite imagery reveals buried river systems stretching across North Africa. Rock art depicts cattle, boats, and organized communities. Radar scanning has identified geometric anomalies beneath the sand consistent with buried settlements. What destroyed this green world? A rapid climate shift turned fertile land into desert within centuries. In Siberia and the Arctic, permafrost hides ancient landscapes frozen in time. Entire ecosystems were buried suddenly. As the ice melts today, preserved remains emerge, offering glimpses into lost environments and possibly lost cultures. In the Amazon, LiDAR scanning has revealed vast networks of earthworks beneath dense jungle canopy. Roads, canals, mounds, and geometric patterns stretch for hundreds of kilometers. These were not small tribes. They were coordinated societies capable of landscape engineering. Yet they left little stone. Their cities were organic. When climate shifted, the jungle reclaimed them. Each lost civilization appears adapted to its environment. Coastal builders, river engineers, forest managers, highland survivors. Each ended abruptly, and each left behind survivors who carried fragments forward. This brings us back to the most uncomfortable implication of all. If Earth operates in cycles, if civilizations rise during stable periods, if collapse is inevitable when the cycle turns, then the question is not whether ancient civilizations existed. The question is whether our own civilization has recognized the pattern in time. Because when we examine our era, the same signals are beginning to appear. Sea levels are rising. Ice sheets are destabilizing. Volcanic systems are showing increased activity. The magnetic field is weakening and drifting. Climate systems once thought stable are oscillating unpredictably. We explain these as modern crises. But in deep time, they are familiar markers. The beginning of another turn. Part 2 does not end with answers. It ends with recognition. Because before we can understand who built the ancient monuments, or what technologies they possessed, we must first understand the force that erased them. And that force is not an enemy. It is the planet itself. If entire civilizations were erased by floods and rapid sea level rise, then the greatest archive of humanity's forgotten past would not be found on land. It would be hidden beneath the oceans. Not because ancient people were drawn to the sea, but because the sea moved. Coastlines are not permanent. They migrate. And when they do, they take history with them. For most of the last 100,000 years, sea levels were dramatically lower than they are today. During the peak of the last ice age, oceans stood more than 120 meters below current levels. Vast continental shelves that now lie submerged were once fertile plains, river valleys, and coastlines. These were the most stable and resource-rich environments on Earth. If advanced civilizations existed, this is where they would have thrived. Today, those landscapes are gone. What remains are shadows detected by sonar, fragments discovered by divers, and geometric patterns that refuse to behave like nature. Across the world's oceans, researchers have identified structures that challenge geological explanation. Flat platforms extending for kilometers. Terraces cut into bedrock with sharp edges. Staircases descending into deeper water. Rectangular foundations arranged in grids. These are not isolated anomalies. They appear repeatedly, across multiple continents, often in places that were dry land during known periods of human habitation. One of the most famous examples lies off the coast of Japan near Yonaguni Island. When first discovered, it was dismissed as a natural sandstone formation shaped by erosion. But as divers returned again and again, the explanation began to collapse. The structure features symmetrical terraces rising in measured steps. Straight edges extend for tens of meters. Corners form precise right angles. Channels appear carved intentionally, resembling drainage systems. Nature erodes randomly. It fractures unevenly. It does not carve broad staircases aligned to cardinal directions. The deeper the investigation went, the harder it became to deny that Yonaguni behaves like architecture. Some surfaces show signs of tool marks. Others appear deliberately flattened. There are features resembling roadways and platforms large enough to host gatherings. And all of it lies submerged at a depth consistent with sea level rise after the last ice age. Yonaguni is not alone. Off the western coast of India, sonar surveys revealed submerged walls, foundations, and stone blocks arranged in deliberate patterns. These ruins lie near the modern city of Dwarka, a place described in ancient Sanskrit texts as a vast and sophisticated port city that vanished beneath the sea in a single night. For centuries, Dwarka was treated as myth, a symbolic tale meant to convey spiritual lessons. But when archaeologists scanned the seabed, they found geometry. Massive stone blocks, some measuring several meters in length. Carved pillars toppled and half buried in sediment. Foundations arranged in grids that match ancient descriptions with unsettling accuracy. The city did not slowly decay. It appears to have been overwhelmed. Further east, across the vast sunder shelf between Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand, sonar mapping reveals straight channels, rectangular depressions, and elevated platforms beneath shallow waters. This region was once a massive landmass connecting islands into a single continent-sized environment. Rivers flowed. Forests thrived. Large populations could have lived here for tens of thousands of years. Today, fishermen occasionally pull up carved stone fragments in their nets. Researchers detect patterns consistent with causeways, harbor basins, and artificial embankments. Yet these discoveries rarely reach mainstream discussion. They are labeled geological anomalies or left unpublished. Across the Atlantic, similar patterns appear. Near the Bahamas, Bimini Road consists of large stone blocks arranged in a linear formation stretching beneath shallow water. The stones are uniform in size and shape, fitted together in a way erosion struggles to explain. Critics argue it is natural beach rock. Supporters note the deliberate alignment and placement. Off the coast of Cuba, deep-sea sonar detected massive stone structures at depths exceeding 600 meters. The formations appear arranged in grid-like patterns resembling streets and plazas. At such depths, these structures would have been submerged long before known civilizations. Exploration was announced. Then it stopped. Access was restricted. Data became scarce. This pattern repeats everywhere underwater evidence emerges. What makes these submerged sites even more compelling is their alignment with ancient flood traditions. Indigenous cultures across the Pacific speak of ancestral land swallowed by rising seas. Polynesian navigators recount island chains that vanished beneath the waves. Southeast Asian oral histories describe forced migrations inland as the ocean advanced. These stories are not vague. They are geographically precise. They name places. They describe coastlines. They remember routes now submerged. Such memory should not be possible if humanity only began complex society 12,000 years ago. Oral traditions rarely survive that long without anchoring events of extraordinary magnitude. Yet flooding alone does not explain the total erasure of culture. Cities can drown, but knowledge usually migrates. Language persists. Technology adapts. Something else must have compounded the destruction. The answer may lie in timing. As sea levels rose, volcanic activity increased. Deglaciation reduces pressure on Earth's crust, triggering eruptions. Ash clouds darkened skies for years. Crops failed. Temperatures dropped. Survivors already displaced by floods now face starvation. Simultaneously, meltwater pulses disrupted ocean currents. Climate systems destabilized. Storm patterns shifted violently. Regions once predictable became hostile. For coastal civilizations dependent on trade, navigation, and agriculture, this would have been a cascading failure. Infrastructure collapses first. Then social order. Then memory. This explains why so little remains. Stone survives. Metal corrodes. Wood decays. Organic materials vanish. Only the most durable foundations endure, often buried or submerged beyond reach. And then there is the silence. Entire underwater sites exist without cultural attribution. No inscriptions. No written language preserved. No surviving descendants who claim them openly. It is as though these civilizations were not merely destroyed, but disconnected from the lineage that followed. This raises a troubling question. Was the erasure accidental? Or was it systemic? Some researchers point to how quickly access to promising underwater sites becomes restricted. Diving permits are revoked. Research funding disappears. Military oversight suddenly appears. Environmental protection is cited, even when exploration would cause minimal disturbance. Official explanations vary, but the outcome is consistent. The deeper a site threatens the accepted timeline, the harder it becomes to study. Why? One explanation is practicality. Underwater archaeology is expensive, difficult, and politically complex. But this does not explain the global consistency of suppression. Another explanation is national security. Ancient sites may overlap with strategic underwater infrastructure. But again, this does not account for sites far from modern military interest. A third explanation is more unsettling. If underwater ruins prove that advanced civilizations existed before the last ice age, then the foundation of modern historical identity collapses. The story of progress, uniqueness, and inevitability fractures. Humanity becomes part of a repeating cycle rather than a singular ascent. That realization could destabilize societies built on the belief that modern civilization is unprecedented and permanent. But silence cannot erase geometry. The ocean floor continues to reveal patterns that refuse to behave like chance. Rectangles. Grids. Right angles. Terraces. These are the fingerprints of planning. And beneath these drowned cities lies another layer of mystery. Not all traces of these civilizations were lost to water. Some survived by escaping it. Which brings us to the people who fled inland. As coastlines vanished, survivors migrated to higher ground. Mountains. Plateaus. Forest interiors. They carried with them fragments of knowledge, stories of the sea rising, of cities lost, of a world that ended suddenly. Over generations, the details blurred. Technology simplified. Memory transformed into myth. But the core remained. This explains why inland civilizations often appear suddenly with advanced knowledge. They were not starting from nothing. They were inheriting fragments. It also explains why many ancient monuments sit far from coastlines yet encode maritime knowledge, celestial navigation, and global geometry. Their builders remembered a world connected by water, not divided by it. Underwater ruins are not anomalies. They are the missing chapters of human history. Chapters written along ancient coastlines, erased by rising seas, and preserved only where stone was heavy enough to sink and endure. As technology improves, as sonar resolution increases and autonomous vehicles explore deeper waters, more of these drowned landscapes will emerge. The question is not whether evidence exists. The question is how much of it will be allowed to surface. Because the ocean is not hiding humanity's past. We are. If the oceans preserve what sank, then stone preserves what refused to disappear. Across every inhabited continent, massive megalithic structures stand like scars on the surface of time. They are older than the cultures that claimed them. Heavier than the tools said to have built them. More precise than the mathematics supposedly available when they were constructed. These monuments are not isolated achievements. They form a global pattern. From the deserts of Egypt to the mountains of Peru, from the jungles of Central America to the plains of China, from the islands of the Pacific to the highlands of Europe, the same architectural fingerprints appear again and again. The same obsession with stone. The same impossible precision. The same astronomical alignment. And the same unanswered question. Who built them first? Modern history credits these structures to early civilizations emerging from primitive conditions. But when examined closely, this explanation begins to fail. Not slowly. Catastrophically. Take Egypt. The Great Pyramid of Giza is often described as a royal tomb, built around 2500 BCE using simple copper tools, wooden sleds, and human labor. Yet this explanation collapses under engineering scrutiny. The pyramid is aligned to true north with an error margin of less than 0.05 degrees. This precision surpasses that of many modern buildings constructed with laser instruments. Its base is level to within a few centimeters across an area larger than several football fields. Its internal chambers are positioned with mathematical intent, encoding ratios related to pi and phi. Its casing stones, now mostly missing, were polished to such smoothness that a blade could not fit between them. This is not trial and error construction. This is the result of a mature technological tradition. Even more unsettling is what lies beneath. Beneath the visible pyramid is a complex network of chambers, shafts, and voids carved deep into the bedrock. Recent scans reveal previously unknown cavities, suggesting a design far more complex than a simple burial monument. And then there is the Sphinx. Erosion patterns on its body suggest prolonged exposure to heavy rainfall that did not occur in Egypt's climate after around 7000 BCE. This implies the Sphinx predates the civilization that supposedly carved it by thousands of years. The face appears recarved. The body older than the head. A monument inherited, modified, and reattributed. The same story repeats across the world. In Peru, high in the Andes, lie the stone complexes of Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, and Machu Picchu. Their foundations consist of massive polygonal stones fitted together with such precision that even today, a sheet of paper cannot be inserted between them. No mortar. No cement. Just perfect contact. These stones weigh tens, sometimes hundreds of tons. They were quarried from distant locations, transported across rugged terrain, lifted into place, and shaped to interlock seamlessly. The Inca, to whom these sites are attributed, openly stated that they did not build the oldest layers. They repaired them. They lived among them. They inherited them. The upper layers are crude by comparison. Smaller stones. Rougher fits. Less precision. This is technological regression, not progress. In Mexico, the pyramids of Teotihuacan rise from the Valley of Mexico in geometric order. The city is laid out along precise axes aligned with astronomical events. The Pyramid of the Sun sits atop a cave system believed to be artificial, carefully shaped and aligned. Mica sheets, an insulating mineral not found locally, were used within the structure, suggesting knowledge of material properties far beyond ritual symbolism. Teotihuacan was already ancient when the Aztecs encountered it. They called it the place where the gods were born. They did not claim to have built it. They did not know who did. In China, massive pyramidal structures dot the landscape, many of them restricted from excavation. Satellite imagery reveals their scale, symmetry, and alignment. Official narratives downplay their significance. Yet their geometry matches global megalithic patterns too closely to ignore. In Europe, Stonehenge is only the most famous example. Beneath forests and fields lie stone circles, dolmens, passage graves, and earthworks aligned to solstices and equinoxes. These structures required precise astronomical knowledge and long-term planning. They were not random ritual sites. They were functional, calibrated, and intentional. Across all these sites, certain features repeat. First, astronomical alignment. Monuments align with solstices, equinoxes, star risings, and planetary cycles. This requires long-term observation and mathematical modeling. It is not guesswork. Second, geophysical placement. Many sites sit atop fault lines, quartz-rich bedrock, or areas of magnetic anomaly. Quartz is piezoelectric, it responds to pressure with electrical charge. Some researchers suggest these structures interacted with Earth's energy systems in ways we no longer understand. Third, extreme durability. These builders chose stone not for ease, but for permanence. They were not building for generations. They were building for cycles. Fourth, missing tools. No quarries show transitional tool marks consistent with the scale of cutting observed. No debris fields match the volume of stone moved. No workshops reveal how such precision was achieved repeatedly. Fifth, cultural amnesia. The civilizations credited with these structures often lack clear records of their construction. Instead, they attribute them to gods, giants, or ancestors from a distant age. This suggests something crucial. The builders did not expect to survive. If earlier civilizations understood Earth cycles, they may have known collapse was inevitable. Floods would rise. Ice would return. Skies would darken. Memory would fracture. Writing would vanish. But stone could endure. These monuments may not have been temples or tombs. They may have been markers, anchors, messages encoded in geometry and alignment, designed to survive planetary resets. Consider the global consistency of pyramid structures. Egypt, Mexico, China, Indonesia. Even underwater. Pyramids are not the most efficient shape for space. But they are the most stable shape for survival. They distribute weight evenly. They resist erosion. They endure earthquakes. They survive floods. A pyramid is not a house. It is a statement. When viewed collectively, these monuments appear less like isolated cultural expressions and more like remnants of a shared architectural language. A language spoken across continents, adapted to local materials, but grounded in the same principles. This challenges the idea of independent invention. Independent cultures do not accidentally converge on identical solutions at the same scale, with the same precision, aligned to the same celestial cycles, using the same construction philosophy. Shared inheritance explains it better. Perhaps these monuments were built at the end of previous cycles, by a civilization, or several, that understood what was coming. They could not save their world. But they could leave traces. And so they built with stone. They aligned with the sky. They placed structures where Earth itself would protect them. They encoded knowledge not in fragile texts, but in form. Then the cycle turned. Floods rose. Ice advanced. Population scattered. Survivors forgot how to build what they could no longer maintain. Over generations, the monuments became sacred. Their purpose mythologized. Their origin obscured. Later civilizations reused them. Restored them. Claimed them. But they did not originate them. This is why the oldest layers are always the most precise. This is why technological sophistication appears to decline over time. This is why ancient builders are remembered as gods. Because from the perspective of survivors, they were. Standing among structures they could not replicate, aligned to knowledge they no longer fully possessed, built with techniques lost to time, the memory transformed into reverence. Megaliths are not evidence of primitive genius. They are evidence of forgotten mastery. And if that mastery existed once, then it can exist again. Which brings us to the most dangerous question yet. If previous civilizations understood Earth cycles well enough to anticipate collapse, if they built monuments to outlast themselves, if they encoded warnings in stone rather than words, then what did they know that we do not? And are we repeating the same mistake, believing ourselves permanent, while standing on borrowed time? Every civilization believes it is different. Every civilization believes collapse happens to others. And every civilization is wrong. If the evidence scattered across stone, sea, and genome is correct, then humanity has walked this path before multiple times. Each cycle begins with survival, grows into mastery, reaches technological confidence, and then collapses under forces it either misunderstood or ignored. The ruins left behind are not warnings carved in language, but in silence. The final truth of lost civilizations is not that they vanished. It is that they repeated us. Technology, when stripped of context, always looks miraculous. When ancient monuments are viewed through the lens of modern assumption, they appear impossible. But impossibility dissolves when continuity is restored. Advanced tools do not emerge from nothing. They evolve. And evolution requires time that modern history refuses to grant the past. Lost civilizations were not magical. They were methodical. Evidence suggests they understood materials at a level we are only beginning to rediscover. Stone was not treated as dead matter but as a responsive medium. Acoustic resonance, vibration, pressure, and frequency may have played roles in shaping and transporting massive blocks. Legends of sound-based construction, long dismissed as metaphor, appear in cultures across the globe. Tibetan monks, Egyptian texts, South American oral traditions, all describe stone moved not by brute force alone, but by manipulation of natural laws. Modern physics does not reject this outright. It simply has not fully explored it. Similarly, energy may not have been centralized the way it is today. Instead of vast grids, ancient systems may have relied on localized resonance structures tuned to Earth's natural frequencies. The planet itself becomes part of the machine. This would explain why monuments sit on fault lines, quartz-rich bedrock, and magnetic anomalies. These were not accidents. They were infrastructure. Yet technology alone does not define a civilization. Its survival does. And this is where every cycle breaks. As societies grow, specialization increases. Knowledge fragments. Few understand the whole system. Dependency replaces resilience. When disruption occurs, whether climatic, geological, or cosmic, the system fails faster than it can adapt. What follows is not immediate extinction, but fragmentation. History does not end in fire. It ends in forgetting. Survivors lose access to tools. Then to methods. Then to understanding. Ritual replaces function. Symbol replaces science. Over generations, what was once engineering becomes myth. What was once warning becomes religion. This is why ancient texts speak in allegory. Not because ancient people lacked intelligence, but because memory under trauma becomes symbolic. Stories survive when data does not. Flood myths are not lessons. They are reports. Skyfire is not metaphor. It is observation. Long winters are not exaggeration. They are climate records encoded in narrative. When viewed collectively, global mythologies form a dataset of past disasters. Not one catastrophe, but many. Not one collapse, but cycles of collapse. Each cycle wipes the surface clean, but never completely. Something always remains. Stone, bone, DNA, and pattern. Which brings us to now. Modern civilization stands at a level of technological complexity unmatched by any known era. But complexity is not strength. It is vulnerability. Our systems are tightly coupled. Energy, food, communication, finance, and medicine depend on uninterrupted flow. Remove one element, and cascading failure begins. We assume redundancy will save us. Past civilizations likely assumed the same. Climate instability is accelerating. Ice sheets are destabilizing faster than models predicted. Sea levels rise not linearly, but in pulses. Volcanic systems show signs of increased activity. Earth's magnetic field continues to weaken and drift. Solar activity increases in cycles that align uncomfortably well with historical collapse periods. None of this is hidden. All of it is measured. And yet, the narrative remains that collapse is impossible because we are advanced. So were they. The difference is not technology. It is awareness. Ancient builders may have known collapse was inevitable. This would explain why they built monuments instead of empires. Why they encoded knowledge in geometry rather than texts. Why they prioritized durability over expansion. They were not trying to dominate the future. They were trying to survive it. Some evidence suggests they attempted continuity projects, sites designed to reseed civilization after collapse. Knowledge repositories not meant to be understood immediately, but rediscovered gradually. Places aligned to celestial events that repeat regardless of era. Stone calendars for future survivors who no longer remember the sky. If so, then modern humanity is not discovering these monuments. We are being addressed by them. The question is whether we are listening. Modern society excels at short-term optimization. Profit. Efficiency. Speed. Growth. But cycles do not respect quarterly gains. Earth operates on scales we struggle to emotionally process. When systems change, they do not negotiate. Collapse is not punishment. It is correction. This does not mean extinction is inevitable. It means choice still exists. Previous civilizations may not have had the global communication necessary to coordinate survival. We do. They may not have understood certain mechanisms. We do. They may not have recognized early warning signs. We do. And yet, we repeat their blind spots. We build along coastlines. We centralize infrastructure. We exhaust ecosystems. We assume tomorrow will resemble today. This is not ignorance. It is denial. If history is cyclical, then the goal is not to prevent the cycle. That may be impossible. The goal is to pass through it with continuity intact. To preserve knowledge, not monuments. To prioritize adaptability over dominance. Stone can endure collapse. But living systems endure recovery. The final lesson of lost civilizations is not that they failed. It is that they tried. They left behind what they could. They encoded warnings in ways that could survive memory loss. They trusted that future humans would eventually reconnect the fragments. That future is now. We stand at the edge of the same turning point they once faced. The signs are familiar. The data is clear. The only unknown variable is response. Will we cling to permanence, or prepare for transition? Will we deny the pattern, or learn from it? Will we become another buried layer, or the civilization that finally breaks the loop? The stones are silent now. They have said all they can. What happens next is no longer written in monuments. It is written in choice.